about the CV. So who is Precious?
I think, like you've said, Precious is definitely a woman of faith. I believe that I was brought here for a purpose by God, and my whole desire and my whole heart is to fulfill that purpose. I believe that I have skills and I have a point of view that is unique, and these skills have to be put to use for those who need it, and also to be able to inspire another generation, those who are coming up. Yes. And also, of course, to prosper. I believe in prosperity. I believe that with ethical leaders, like you said, who are prospering, we can actually do good in this world. And so I feel like the writing skill that God has given me is something that I need to put to use, like I said, for the new generation, but also to let people understand that art is something that we can find in everyday life. I think that as human beings, we are wired for story. That's why you brought me here. And storytelling is something that we do inherently. And I really want everyone to understand that storytelling is not something that is extremely difficult. It's something that all of us have been wired to do, something that all of us participate in our everyday lives, and something that we can all learn if we feel somewhat disadvantaged in that area.
Wow. That's a lot. But Precious has always been quite a lot. Not too much, but a lot. To your listeners out there, people think that when we talk about the art of storytelling, we're talking about being a writer or an author, and maybe we did not help that bias by bringing an author. But what are the many ways in which storytelling is used in the business world? Smart 24 is a business television. I'm sure business people out there listening. Where do you see the art of storytelling being very crucial in our day-to-day lives?
Yes, I think that storytelling is one of the most effective ways of communication. Everybody, if you want to connect to someone, the best and the quickest way to do that is through storytelling. I believe that even as a business station or even as lawyers, whether you're an architect, when you want to connect to someone, whether it's a client, whether it's a work colleague, exactly, you do need to understand how to navigate a narrative, which is a story. You have to understand where a story begins, where the middle is, and where the end is. And this happens across the board. Whether you're talking to a best friend or you're talking to a spouse, by the way, you had better know how to communicate with a spouse. Yes. And you had better know how to communicate with your clients. You had better know how to communicate with your guests. And the best way to do that is to find a connection through storytelling. And like I was saying, especially us Africans, we are really wired for story. We are the first people, or rather we are known for our oral histories. Yes. And actually, if you go back to our history, and in most of the villages, especially in West Africa, where there were these people called the griots, who were the ones who held the entire archive of a tribal history. Wow. And they held it within their consciousness or their heads or their memories. And anybody who wanted to know any aspect of the life or the history of the tribe went to these griots, and these griots would just pick out this story from whatever space it was in their minds and recite it. And so these people were the holders of history. So when it comes to writing, we actually get this form of history telling or storytelling just in a written form. So written form is just an aspect of storytelling. Because even when you're in advertising, you have to understand how to communicate and to tell a story to those who you believe are your customers, to connect to them. Whether you are trying to propose to someone, you had better have some form of story in that sense, a history with the person.
Or if you come home late.
Or if you come home late, you had better have a story. If you are a government official, you do have to have an understanding of story. Have an understanding of storytelling if you want to connect. And obviously, there is a negative aspect to storytelling, but that doesn't change the fact that we are wired for story, and story is a most effective form of communication in whatever medium you are.
Wow. Stories have been in your world. I remember growing up and reading a literature book by Lillian Tindiebwa.
Sweet Lord.
What was that called again?
Recipe for Disaster.
Yes, Recipe for Disaster was a literature book that was written by none other than Lillian Tindiebwa, who is a mother to Precious. Yes. I think we need to give her flowers out there. And I'd like to think that she created you as an author in a way.
Created.
She literally made you.
It's true.
But so tell me, how was it growing up with, because she's been I think she's one of the founder members of FemRight, right?
Yes.
FemRight is the organization that brings together writers and authors,
Female
writers in Uganda.
Yes.
And it started in the 80s, which was quite,
Yes.
like really, really in the 80s. I mean, really.
A while ago.
Yes. So growing up in those influences, most children will probably run away from what their parents do, or it's very rare that they'll just step in there. Did you always think storytelling would be your thing, writing, or did it just happen to you? How did Precious and Stories begin?
Well, shall I tell you a story?
Yes.
Actually, I used to scribble in books when I was in P1, P2. I remember myself writing poems. I don't think that I knew that these were poems, but the way they appeared on paper, after you get to study them, you're like, oh, I was actually writing poems. I did get into trouble with my mother, even though she is a writer, when I decided at that young, tender age to write a poem to the boy next door, which she intercepted.
Oh, wow.
I remember that I said this to her a few months ago, and she couldn't remember, and I thought to myself, that was...
Do you remember the poem?
Oh, goodness, even if I did, I wouldn't say it was ridiculous. It was something about flowers and walks and pets. It was ridiculous. But I remember that the way that I wanted to express the fact that I thought this guy was so cute was through writing.
Yes.
And although it ended up in that direction, and my mom quickly put that out of
African
me,
mother
she was very, very encouraging when it came to reading. Our house was full of books. I know that for a fact that her father was the first person to build a school in her area of Rukunjiri. Their family is actually well known for that. She used to tell me stories about how her father was the first person to bring a radio in the whole village, and everybody would gather around to listen to the BBC.
Yeah.
And so she always grew up with this understanding of story, and she would encourage us to read, and she would bring books home. So I think in my growing up, it was wonderful to be in a home where creativity was encouraged.
Yes.
Yes. Having said that, when I went to university, my dad actually took over. When they sent me for university, they sent me to do management and IT. And halfway through, I realized I don't think this is for me, but I was afraid to leave.
And this was in...
Don't say that, yeah?
No. I'm talking about the university.
Yes, Manchester University.
But Precious left some of us to
yes,
go to Makerere. And one thing you don't remember is, you would not know, is that your name was right next to mine in the Faculty of Law.
No way.
Yes, Precious Kemijisha.
And I was.
Did you apply for law?
Yes, in
Yes.
N6 I applied for law, and then
Makerere failed to get you.
No, it's okay. They got you, and I'm pretty sure they did much better than get me. Yeah. So when I did management and IT, I wanted to leave, but when parents are spending money, you're totally afraid to do that, because I found the course very, very technical. And in one of my essays, I remember very well, it was manufacturing in Britain. I wrote from the deepest part of my heart, and I handed in my essay, and it came back to me with a comment from my lecturer saying, "Precious, this is not a story." And I thought to myself, oh my God, it should be a story. Everything is a story. And I actually, that very day after I had my essay, I put it in my bag, and I crossed the road to another university, and I went and enrolled for literature without telling my parents. And that university that I enrolled in, Manchester Metropolitan, which is different from Manchester University, is actually now the one where Jennifer Makumbi teaches. I totally missed her. But yeah, so they had a very good literature course. So I think I owe a lot to my mother, and I'm very grateful for growing up in a home that encouraged creativity and
Smart 24, driving business.
Luxury redefined at Seasan Hotel as you and out in the splendor of elegant living, fit for the royalty that you are. Step into comfort, pampering and blissful customer-centric service as you select from our range of comfy, exquisite living quarters furnished to meet with your royal preference. Surrounded by scenic beauty, our tropical setting allows you to escape the glamorous ordeal of city life. Our ambient green gardens will guide you to a place of revitalizing rest. The 3-star restaurant caters to your palate, serving you